I want to tell you something about falling. Everyone falls, every learner, every person who has ever tried to build a skill, reach a goal, or become a better version of themselves. They fall. They miss sessions. They have difficult weeks. They stop and then feel too far behind to restart. They make the same mistake again after promising themselves they would not. They lose momentum and cannot find the way back. Everyone falls. The question is never whether you will fall. The question is whether you rise, because falling is not the problem. Staying down is. The learner who falls and rises, who stops and restarts, who loses the habit and rebuilds it, who fails a conversation and tries again, is infinitely further along than the learner who never falls because they never tried hard enough to be in a position to fall. Falling means you were trying. Rising means you are still trying and still trying across falls and rises, stops and restarts, across all the imperfect, unglamorous. Persisting is the only path to anything worth building. Today's story is about a young man named Zane. Zane fell, more than once. He was very good at falling, but he learned slowly and perfectly, really, to be just as good at rising. This is his story. Meet Zane. Zane was 23 years old. He had just started his first professional job, a junior marketing assistant at a small advertising agency. He helped with copy, content, and client communication. He was creative and enthusiastic. He had been trying to improve his English for 3 years, trying in the sense of someone who falls and rises repeatedly rather than someone who falls once or someone who never falls at all. In 3 years, he had started seriously 4 times. Each start had been genuine. Each had involved a course, a plan, real daily sessions for several weeks, and each had ended. First ending 6 weeks in. A hectic project at university had consumed everything. The English study stopped. He had not restarted for 4 months. Second ending 9 weeks in. A family situation had made consistent mornings impossible. He had told himself he would return when things settled. They settled. He returned, but only 2 months later, after the habit had completely dissolved. Third ending 5 weeks in. He had moved to a new city for the job. The disruption of moving, new apartment, new routine, new everything, had broken the study habit without him even noticing it breaking. Fourth start, now, 3 months in, the longest streak he had ever maintained. But at the start of month 3, he had missed a week. A genuinely difficult week. Long days at the new agency, a project that ran over deadline, evenings too consumed to study. And now he was sitting on a Sunday, 1 week of missing behind him, wondering whether this was going to become the fourth ending. The wait of a week. The Sunday after the missed week, Zane sat at his desk. The course was open on his laptop. He had opened it twice already that Sunday and closed it without starting. The familiar heaviness had arrived. He had been here before. After the first ending, after the second, after the third. This specific feeling, the week of missing that had grown too heavy to simply pick up from, the feeling said, "You have broken it again. The habit is gone. You're going to have to start over." And starting over feels impossible. So maybe just wait a little longer until the timing is better. He recognized the feeling now. He had felt it 3 times before, and 3 times he had listened to it. 3 times the wait a little longer had become 4 months, 2 months, the dissolution of everything he had built. He opened his notebook. He wrote, "Sunday, 1 week missed. The feeling is here again. I know this feeling. I know where it leads if I listen to it." He looked at what he had written, then he wrote one more line. He wrote, "I am not going to listen to it this time." He pressed play on the course. He studied for 25 minutes. He closed the laptop. He wrote, "Sunday, rose, 1 week missed. Rose anyway." This is the difference between 4 endings and something else. Lesson 1. Rising is a skill. The next morning, Monday, Zane woke up and studied before work. Not 25 minutes, 15. He was still slightly behind the week's rhythm, and he gave himself permission to ease back in rather than forcing a full session on the first day back. 15 minutes. He wrote, Monday, back, 15 minutes. 15 minutes, easier than Sunday. Rising is like a muscle. The first movement after falling is always the hardest. He thought about that. Rising is like a muscle. The first movement after falling is the hardest. The resistance is highest right at the moment when you are deciding to get back up. Once you have made that first movement, started the session, pressed play, done the first 5 minutes, the resistance drops. The hardest thing is not the studying, it is the starting after stopping. He had made the hardest move on Sunday, getting back up after the week of missing. Everything from Monday onward was slightly easier because Sunday had happened. He thought about the 3 previous falls. In each one, he had not made the Sunday move. He had listened to the feeling and waited. And waiting had made the first movement harder, not easier. The longer he had waited, the higher the resistance had grown, until it was high enough that restarting felt impossible. The lesson was clear: fall if you must. But rise as quickly as you can, because every day you stay down, the rising becomes harder. Daily English sentences. Repeat after me. Rising is a skill. I practice it every time I fall. The first movement after falling is always the hardest. I make it anyway. I rose on Sunday. Every day after is easier because Sunday happened. Fall if I must. Rise as quickly as I can. Every day down makes the rising harder. I do not wait. 1 week missed. Rose anyway. That is the whole difference. Rising is like a muscle. I am making it stronger every time I use it. Lesson 2. What rising quickly preserves. 2 weeks after the Sunday rise, Zane made an observation. The week he had missed had cost him something. He could feel it. Vocabulary that had been sharp was slightly softer. A grammar point he had been close to mastering felt less certain. 1 week of missing had cost some sharpness, but it had not cost the foundation. The month and a half of consistent study before the missed week, that was still substantially there. The vocabulary built in weeks 1 through 6. The grammar patterns practiced in weeks 3 through 5. The listening comprehension developed across 45 sessions, not gone, just slightly dimmer. And 2 weeks of rising had brought most of it back. He compared this to his 3 previous endings. After the first ending, 4 months of absence, when he had restarted, he had been almost back at the beginning. 4 months had cost most of what 6 weeks had built. After the second ending, 2 months. When he restarted, significant erosion, weeks of relearning things he had already learned. This time, 1 week. 2 weeks of rising, almost entirely preserved. The lesson was clear and mathematical. The longer you stay down, the more you lose. The faster you rise, the more you preserve. Rising quickly was not just about character or persistence. It was practical. It saved the work. It meant the fall cost as little as possible. He wrote in his notebook, "Quick rising preserves the work. Slow rising erodes it. 4 months lost almost everything. 1 week lost very little. 2 weeks of rising restored most of it. Rise fast. Protect what was built." Daily English sentences. Repeat after me. Quick rising preserves the work. Slow rising erodes it. 1 week costs some sharpness, not the foundation. 2 weeks of rising restored most of what the fall cost. The longer you stay down, the more you lose. I do not stay down. Rise fast. Protect what was built. That is the practical lesson. 4 months lost almost everything. 1 week lost very little. The cost of falling is determined by how quickly you rise. Lesson 3. 8 months into his current streak, Zane had a 4th fall, a 2-week fall this time, bigger than the Sunday week. He had been traveling for work, a project that had taken him away from his routine for 10 days. And when he returned, the transition back had been rough. A week of catching up at work, jet lag, the routine not reestablishing itself naturally. 2 weeks without studying. He felt the weight of it on the Saturday after returning. The feeling arrived, the familiar one. You have broken it again. 2 weeks this time. It is going to take real effort to get back. Maybe you should wait until next week when the routine is more settled. He recognized it. He had named it now. He called it the voice of the fall. The one that made staying down feel like wisdom and rising feel optional. He did not wait until next week. He opened the course on Saturday morning. He studied for 20 minutes. He wrote in his notebook, Saturday, back from 2 weeks. Rose the first available morning. The voice came. I recognized it. I did not listen. 2 weeks was a bigger fall than the Sunday week. Getting back felt harder. The first session was slower and less focused than his best sessions, but it happened on Saturday, not the following week. And the following week, the routine was back. Not perfectly, but mostly. He thought about what was different about this fall versus the three endings before the current streak. Before, the falls had become endings because he had listened to the voice, because he had waited, because the waiting had compounded the cost until restarting felt too hard. Now, the falls were still falls, but they were not endings because he rose before the voice could compound its damage. Rising was the skill that made the difference between a fall and an ending. Daily English sentences. Repeat after me. 2 weeks away. Rose the first available morning. I recognized the voice of the fall. I did not listen. The fall is not the problem. The not rising is the problem. Rising before the voice compounds its damage. That is the skill. Bigger fall. Faster rise. The pattern holds. Falls are not endings. Not if I rise quickly enough. The voice said, wait. I rose instead. That is the whole difference. Lesson 4. 1 year. What rising built 1 year after the Sunday when Zane had almost let the fourth ending happen. He sat at his desk. 1 year. 321 sessions, 2 significant falls, the Sunday week and the 2-week travel fall. Both risen from quickly. Both failed to become endings. His English was genuinely, significantly, really stronger than it had been a year ago. Not just in measured skills, vocabulary, grammar, listening, in confidence, in the sense that English was something he did, an active, present tense part of his life, rather than something he was planning to eventually learn. He thought about the 3 endings before this year. 6 weeks built and lost, 9 weeks built and lost, 5 weeks built and lost, 20 weeks of work, all of it spent. And 1 year of work, punctuated by 2 falls, both risen from still mostly there, built and preserved. Not perfect, not without cost, but there. He thought about the difference. Not that this year had been harder than the others, not that he had been more motivated. He had simply learned to rise faster. The skill of rising, practiced on a Sunday, practiced on a Saturday after 2 weeks of travel, had preserved a year of work that 3 previous years had not been able to hold. He wrote in his notebook, Year 1, 321 sessions, 2 falls, 2 rises, 1 year of English mostly preserved. The skill of rising is worth more than any course or method. Rise every time, rise fast. That is how a year of work stays a year of work. Daily English sentences. Repeat after me. 321 sessions, 2 falls, 2 rises, 1 year preserved. The skill of rising preserved what 3 previous years could not hold. I rise fast. That is how the work stays. Falls did not become endings. Rising made sure of that. 1 year of English, still there. 2 rises protected it. Rising is worth more than any method. Rise every time. Year 1, built and preserved because I learned to rise. Final words. Rise every time. Zane's story is simple. He fell 4 times in 3 years. 3 times he stayed down too long. The work dissolved. The endings accumulated. Then he learned one skill. Rising quickly, 1 Sunday, 1 Saturday, and a year of work preserved. Maybe you have fallen. Maybe you are down right now, a week missed, a habit broken, a session that has not happened in too long. I want to say one thing. Rise today. Not next week when the timing is better. Not when you feel motivated. Not when the routine has reestablished itself. Today, 15 minutes, 10 minutes, 5 minutes. Something small right now. Because every day you stay down, the rising becomes harder. The cost of the fall grows larger. The work that was built becomes a little more distant, and every day you rise, the cost stops growing. The work is protected, the fall stays small. You will fall again. Everyone does, but you can choose how long you stay down. Rise every time. Rise fast. That is the skill that changes everything. See you in the next one. Stay calm, stay persistent, and rise every time you fall.